One of my favorite people always told me, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So today we're going over our exact process on how to plan a smooth and eventful cruise.
Welcome back, and if you're new, welcome to our channel. We're happy to see you here. I'm Jordan.
I'm Amy.
And we are
Beyond the Dock.
The first thing that we're going to talk about today is the process we follow when we're booking a cruise. So some of the key things we look for are the itinerary, the port, the ship, and the room type.
We're going to show the process of one of our more memorable cruises and go through step by step of what we did to plan to make it so eventful.
So we really like the Caribbean right now. So we try to take as many cruises there as we can. But there are some islands we haven't been to. One cruise we went on that was very memorable was one that had an itinerary for all these different stops we wanted to go to. Like at the time we hadn't been to Puerto Rico or St. Thomas.
St. Martin, Antigua.
What's the Kitts one?
St. Kitts. What's the Kitts one? St. Kitts.
I was thinking Kitts and Nevis or whatever. That's why.
That is,
yeah.
because Nevis is by Kitts.
Yeah, okay. So we were looking for an itinerary that had a lot of these islands in the stop. We had planned one before, and that was one that was rescheduled and sent us to Mexico instead.
Mm-hmm.
So we were determined to find another itinerary that would have these stops that we were so looking forward to. So the itinerary we found was with Norwegian. It was on board the Norwegian Sky, and it had a stop at their private island, of course, Great Stirrup Cay. And then it was Puerto Rico, St. Martin, Antigua, St. Kitts, St. Thomas, and the Dominican Republic. And it was sailing out of Miami.
It began and ended with a day at sea, which we loved the idea of because we don't like a lot of days at sea. And we thought, oh, a new island every day, amazing.
Another consideration is where the ship is porting out of. So typically, a lot of the Caribbean ships port out of Miami or Fort Lauderdale. And so we were looking for a cruise that came out of those places just because there was a direct flight from us to the airport there. And so it's easy for us to get there.
Well, you might also just want to go to a port that's a little bit more fun to stay at for a few days. We've left out of Puerto Rico, and originally we had planned on staying a few extra days, and then time-wise we ended up not being able to, so we just stayed one night. But it's sometimes fun to, spend a little extra time where your port is. Like even in Florida, if you're flying out of Orlando, for example, you might want to spend a few days at Universal. We're planning one like that now.
Another consideration when planning the cruise is which ship you'll be on. If the ship is important, then you'll want to look at the ship's itineraries to see if it matches any of the ports that you'd like to stop at. But if the ship isn't as important to you, it's still a good idea just to see what the ship is like to get a feel for it.
You also want to think about the room type. And I think sometimes that can depend on your cruise. Like for example, if you're taking an Alaskan cruise, you probably want a balcony. Budget also plays a part. If you're going with a large family, you might want an interior room. We generally prefer a balcony just because we really like the fresh air. We like looking out. Often we'll see dolphins, flying fish, and that's something that we just enjoy.
On this cruise with Norwegian, we weren't able to book a balcony, but we got an ocean view room, which I don't know how much. I think I'd rather just have an interior and save the money, because the ocean view, the room we were in was just like the porthole. It was kind of big, but I don't know. It doesn't compare to a balcony, so I'd rather either have a balcony or an interior room.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice in a way because you could look out and see where you were at, and it wasn't horrible, but it's not a balcony.
Yeah.
When we began planning, the day at Great Stirrup Cay was going to be on my birthday, and so we wanted to make it extra special and rent a villa. So we planned that. And then we had a little itinerary flip, and it ended up being our last stop instead of our first, which ended up working out because this was the cruise that we missed the ship, which is in another video if you want to watch and hear that story of how we became hitchhikers on the cruise ship. But luckily for us, it worked out that way, or we would have missed it completely. But we thought about each day, the timing of things, what we wanted to do. And we had been to Dominican and we loved it. We knew we wanted to do the natural rock slides, waterfall excursion. So those two things were our main excursions that we were focused on. We knew we wanted to do that in Dominican, and we knew we wanted the villa at Great Stirrup Cay. And then in the other places, we had to do a little more research to find out what we wanted to do exactly. So we thought about each place, did some research. We also like to budget, where we knew we'd be spending a little more money on those bigger, more important excursions to us. And so we thought some beach days, just taxiing to the beach, were in our budget. So we planned that out. We knew at St. Thomas we wanted to go to Magens Bay Beach, which you can taxi to. We didn't know a lot about Antigua at the time because we hadn't been yet, or St. Martin or St. Kitts. We knew in Puerto Rico that we wanted to do some shopping in Old San Juan. My sister had lived there, and she told us all the fun spots to go to. So we kind of had an idea about that as well. But we did a little research. We found a resort in St. Martin that we could taxi to and spend the day out, which was really nice. Besides, that was the time I cracked my patella in half. But it was fun besides that. And then in Antigua, we found a beach not far from the port where there was good snorkeling, Deep Bay Beach, that we wanted to go to. Of course, our plans changed once we got there, and they told us they couldn't take us there. We had some backup beaches and ideas, but our taxi driver said she would love to give us a little tour of the island and take us to some historical sites and some beautiful scenic views, as well as some beach time. And so she took us to a beach also that we could snorkel at. So we got the best of everything, which we also did a video on. This was one of our most memorable, eventful cruises. That's why we chose this one. We loved it. And then St. Kitts, we really had no idea what to do, even after looking. I think there was an ATV excursion that looked fun. We were going with my sister's family, so we coordinated with them, and my sister talked about a catamaran. So we ended up doing a catamaran excursion, and we chose that, and it ended with we catamaraned out to snorkeling and then came back on the catamaran. They had lunch on the boat.
When you book excursions, you'll want to book your must-do excursions as soon as possible. So if you're booking through the cruise line, you'll do that as soon as they allow you to book it. Often with excursions, you can do that right away once you book. Sometimes you have to wait until 90 days or 45 days before sailing, but usually there's at least some excursions available. If you use a third-party site, then you can book the excursion at the same time you book your cruise. And most of the excursions booked through a third-party site will allow you to cancel for free up until a day before the excursion. That way you know you've locked in the excursions that you just have to do, and you don't need to worry about missing out on those or those getting booked up and now you can't get in.
Some ports, they even allow you to book the excursion the day of. So they'll have booths set up where they'll take you to a variety of places, but that's not always an option. So it's smart to plan ahead and know exactly.
Yeah, if you're on board, then you can go to the excursion desk. They can help you with booking excursions and let you know what's available. But by that time, a lot of the popular excursions would most likely be booked.
Yeah, sometimes they even have kiosks. I know MSC, on our MSC cruise, they had a kiosk, and that one they switched our itinerary. So the lines were very long at customer service because everyone was trying to figure out what to do last minute and switch things. So the kiosks made it a little bit easier, but they didn't have that available for all the stops. So we still had to stand in that line.
Yeah.
We found a little research goes a long way. I think we made a few mistakes on our first, where I kind of glanced over different things, and then once we were on, I couldn't even remember which stop had what options, and Because of that, it wasn't quite as fun as it could have been. So yeah, we definitely like to do our research ahead of time and know exactly what we're going to do, plan it out, and it makes it so much more memorable.
What we do now is we write down like 3 to 5 things at each stop that we really want to do, and we list them in order of our preference. And it could just be 3 beaches that we really want to go to, and then why, like good snorkeling or lots of shade, something like that. And that really helps because like we said before, we have a plan and like the taxi driver doesn't really want to take us there, or maybe it's a bad weather day, but having backup plans does help a lot.
I'm being flexible. Sometimes you just gotta go with the flow.
The next step in our planning after the excursions is the activities on the ship. We like to know what's available, what interests we have that can be met on the ship, whether it's miniature golf or karaoke. There's usually a variety of activities on each ship, but each ship is also different.
It's always important to check your schedule and look at that open free time. And when you do, you know when to book shows, activities. A lot of times in the evening for us, we like to have early dinners usually. So then after we can do something fun each night. So we'll look at what's available for that time and select what we want. You'll want to book early as soon as possible for certain things like shows because they often do fill up. And so it's nice to think of that ahead of time.
Now with dining especially, if there's a specific time you like to have your dining, then you need to book that as soon as it's available to book, which is usually 45 days before you leave. Otherwise, you'll end up at 9 o'clock for your dinner time.
Yeah, this particular cruise, we were at the same dining restaurant every evening. But some cruise lines like Norwegian, they have different restaurants that you book. And so that takes a little more planning to think about each day. And the times can often change for that. It's not always going to be the same if you're trying to get into one of their specialty restaurants. If you're looking for a family-friendly show, those are usually earlier time. So you'll want to keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, if the shows you want to go to are at the earlier time when you would have dinner, then maybe a later dinner would be a better idea. With the shows, they do have a variety, like comedy shows. Yeah, variety shows. There's
sometimes magicians, dance performances, singing, a lot of different things.
Yeah. We
also just enjoy karaoke, which you can just usually walk into, or like on some cruise lines, you can book a room. It just depends, but that's something we enjoy.
Sea days are going to be the busiest days for activities. So if there's a show you really want to see, it probably be better to see it on a day that is at port rather than a sea day. You can book early, especially on sea days if you want to go to those.
Yeah. So let's talk about what to pack. It's important to think about your excursions and each day and what you are going to be wearing, or you might end up unsure or repeating outfits. I like to plan for each one. Like for example, in the Dominican, we were hiking and in the water. So we're on a lot of rocks, wet rocks. We're climbing around a lot and swimming. So it was a variety of things. So for footwear, I chose a water shoe. And this was a lot more traction than like, say, a water sock. So this is nice if you're doing like a variety of things, hiking, swimming, they get wet. So I always like to have a pair of these. This isn't bad if you're just going on a boat and swimming, because then you have a little footwear, you can swim, put it on. Sometimes you can even wear these with your fins. Sometimes not, just depends. And then I also have these sandals that I like, that I talked about in our last video. They have a strap, so they stay on really well, but they're waterproof. This is great for a beach day, walking around, shopping, things like that. I also like to make sure I have a laundry bag because you don't want your smelly clothes with your clean clothes. I mentioned on our last video about the hooks. That's a must-have. We'll also go over in more detail in another video specifics about what we pack, but this is just a few A few little things you don't want to forget and miss. We like to have luggage tags, strong luggage tags, where ahead of time we can put our room number. We once had a guy at luggage check-in write our room number, and he wrote the wrong room number. So we had to track down our luggage. So it's nice to have this planned, done ahead of time, so your luggage will be delivered to your room. So it's also nice to have a lanyard. We like these that are a little stretchy. If you have a key card, so that you can easily scan it to get in your room. You'll have to scan these getting off and on the ship. So it's nice to just carry them around because you will need to have access to these quickly. Some cruise lines do offer bracelets, and you'll find more and more now. This bracelet kind of wraps around. And so you don't need a lanyard. You can just scan this to get in your room. You can scan this to get off and on the ship. Really convenient. And a lot of cruise lines are switching to this, which is really nice. Probably should have mentioned this first, but don't forget your passport. We really like every child to have a passport. All of our children have them. We have them. This is a way you can make sure you will get on board. I know you mentioned in your last cruise news video about the family where the child didn't make it on. It's just a lot easier to have a passport, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. One thing with the passports you do need to keep in mind is that the passport can't expire within 6 months of your sailing date. So always check your passport expiration date when you're planning a cruise to make sure that your passport will still be valid.
Yes, and plan far in advance to have these if you're getting them for the first time, because they can take 4 to 6 weeks or sometimes even a little bit longer. So I like to plan way ahead of time, make sure you are not stressed last minute.
Another thing we always pack is cash. Whether you're doing shopping or you need it for tips, a lot of taxi drivers or shops don't accept credit cards. You need cash. And if you're paying $60 a person for a taxi ride somewhere, then that's a lot of cash you'll need to have on hand.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to have larger bills and then break it on down from there to singles, just so that we have money for tips. So we have smaller bills when we're trying to negotiate prices, because you can't give somebody, a $100 bill on a $10 item, or they might not be so willing to give you a better price. Some places do take credit cards if you're comfortable with that. So if you don't have enough cash, then the credit card is an option. We kind of do both depending on where we are. If they take credit cards, we might go that route just to conserve our cash.
Mm-hmm.
There are ATMs on the ship, and then also most ports have ATMs as well, so you can get cash if you need it, but it's better just to be prepared ahead of time.
We've never had a problem using credit cards, except in Mexico. We were overcharged a couple of times. So you want to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, what happened was they converted US to Mexican peso, and they charged us this really high conversion rate, but then on the receipt, it also converted. And it was a lower rate than what they charged us. So we basically paid double the conversion fees. So it cost us about, I don't know how much more, $80 more than what it should have been because of their math. So always keep that in mind.
I also like to think about what we're going to be doing in each stop and what kind of cash we're going to need. Like, how much shopping are we going to do? Like, for example, on this trip, we knew we were going to be shopping in Puerto Rico. So I planned out ahead of time how much we would want to spend. Although I think we use credit card in most shops.
And now you know how we prepare for each cruise from booking to boarding. There's been a lot of lessons we've learned along the way, but we'd like to hear from you. What have you learned through your mistakes or just from others' mistakes on how to prepare for a cruise that we didn't cover? Let us know in the comments below. We're excited to hear from you.
If you found this helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell so you won't miss any future cruise tips.
And until next time, we'll see you as we travel beyond the dock.
Happy cruising!